Thanks everybody for coming. Sometimes in life you have to do things impromptu, and that's kind of what this assembly is all about, but it's for really good news. Before we get to the fun part, or the photo op, let me talk to you about some women that are pretty important in my life and women that I love a lot. The first one is, freshmen, you don't know this, but I talk about my mother a lot, right? So let me talk to you about my mom. And my mom was, she had 7 kids, but she ran the show, and she had all these great one-line sayings that really simplified life. And one of the ones that kind of stuck with me, and maybe today is proof of, is, it doesn't hurt to ask, all they can say is no. Well, that's kind of been a mantra for me for just about everything I've done. And, I don't know if you guys know, but when I showed up for my interview here at Villa Joseph Marie to be president, Sister Regina, who's here, she asked, she goes, well, do you have an opening statement? And the first things I said was, well, I got some problems with my candidacy. I don't have any background in education. My daughters went to a competitive school, and I'm a guy. So that tells you the way I approach some things is another thing my mom used to say. And she said, just put the turd right on the table. So the interview had to go only one way, and that was up from there, right? I just said exactly what they were all thinking. What the heck is this guy doing? So anyhow, just try to remember that. It doesn't, you never know about anything in life until you ask. So just, always put yourself out there. And so what? If they say no, they say no. Second group of women that I've come to love and really admire are the Sisters of St. Casper. And we're really, really fortunate to have them in our community today and often throughout the school year. And frankly, that's why we go out to Chicago so much, because I think I personally get so much inspiration from just being around them. And they're very humble people. They're very humble women. They'll never brag. So make sure when you see them walk in their halls, ask them about some of their experience. So what do I mean by that? Well, you don't have to do too much research to find out where they're from is the south side of Chicago. And when Mother Maria went to the south side of Chicago, it was a prairie, and Marquette Park still is right there. That was probably the end of the town. But the city kind of caught up to it. And the city of today looks a lot different than the city that they showed up in. And maybe my biggest inspiration from them is just by watching how they have ministered to their community. Now, you might say this is an order of nuns that are educators or involved in healthcare, and yes, they've had schools and hospitals. But really what I admire about them is just how they've taken care of the people right outside their front door. When we go out to Chicago, we hear about something called the Southwest Organizing Project. And that was formed because this neighborhood has a lot of problems. It's where ground zero was something called predatory lending, which essentially people would take out loans on their houses and couldn't afford to pay them back, so then the houses would get repossessed, and more than half of their neighborhoods were empty houses. Their community is home to a lot of immigrants, some of whom are documented and some of whom are not. And do you know what? I know God doesn't care whether you have documents or not, and our Sisters of St. Casimir don't care, and they'll fight for every single person walking down their block. They don't care if you're an addict mother and you need help. They have music therapy programs to help you get some self-confidence and to be able to put one foot in front of another as you try to rebuild your family. So those are the type of things that these wonderful women walking down our halls didn't just do one day or 1 week or 1 year. They've done it for over 110 years. So I can't tell you how much I admire them. So the third woman that's here today that I want to introduce, I don't love because I don't know her yet, right? But I really am thankful to her. And that's Representative Helen Tai, who's our state rep from the area that Bill is from. And I'd like to, I'll let her introduce herself, but I suspect that she has a little bit of fearlessness in her too. She lives in the area, she's from New Hope. She was a New Hope Township supervisor. Our former state representative took a job in Philadelphia, and so that left an opening. And that opening was for a state representative, and that opening is for about 4 or 5 months, right? Until she has to run again. So can you imagine the thought that must have gone through her mind and her husband's mind? Is this worth all this? You know, am I going to actually put myself out there to run and to, you know, go every night to some function and to be invited to schools and speak on my feet? I mean, is it all worth it? And sometimes you just have to say, you know what, I'm going to try. So without further ado, the star of our show today is our Representative Helen Tai, and I'd like her to come up and talk to you.
Thank you, Tom. Well, the first thing we're going to do before I say too much is, they already know about the facility. Okay, so you all know that Villa Joseph Marie is building a STEM facility over at the old nursing home. And I'm very happy to say that I was able to help get a grant for the school to help pay for this. So,
it's for $1 million.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you all of you for being here today. It's my absolute pleasure to be here. Tom asked me to come and talk with you and tell you a little bit about why this was important, and I think it's interesting what he said about, you know, I decided to try for the seat, and was it all worth it? It's definitely all worth it, because to be able to help with something like this is just such a wonderful feeling. You know, I was telling Annie, she interviewed me for an article, and I was telling her that when I ran for the seat, and when you run for any sort of political office, mostly what people think about is the laws that you'll pass. And, you know, whether it's about providing funding for education or passing gun safety laws or protecting the environment, which are all super important things. But on the flip side, the other part of my job, which is so enjoyable, is meeting people in the community, finding out what's important to them, and helping them be able to get what they need. And so I think I was in office only for a few weeks when Tom came to my office and said, you know, we want to do this, and can you help me? And I think you're right, we didn't even have our phones yet. We were using cell phones, and we had just moved into the office, but we're barely furnished, and he told me what he wanted to do here for all of you, and I was absolutely thrilled to be in a position to help. And so we were very fortunate. The timing was actually really tight. Right after he left the office, I called my leadership and I said, hey, there's this grant. It's really a wonderful opportunity to provide education for girls. And so we talked a little bit, and then Leader Dermody, who I was speaking with, said, that deadline is tomorrow or something. I can't remember the timing, but it was very close. He said, you got to send that to me immediately. So we right away wrote a letter of support and sent it in, and I was so thrilled when we heard that it was approved. So I would like to tell you a little bit about myself and why I think I would have helped with this regardless, but it has a little bit of special meaning to me. My mom is an immigrant from China, and she is retired now, but she was a chemistry professor. And all of you who are here now, it's very common that both parents work. But when I was growing up, almost none of my friends, none of their moms worked. And so it was unusual to have a mom who worked, and even more unusual that she was in the science field. And so I grew up with that belief. it never occurred to me that as a girl that science was out of reach for me, or that it was something that was for boys. It was something, you know, I did hear people say that, and I noticed in my classrooms there were usually more boys than girls in the science classrooms, but I never felt that that was something unachievable or even, you know, something to even question, because my mom was a professor in a science field. And then I ended up studying statistics, and I became a statistician for many years and worked in that field. And what I noticed, and still notice now, is that whenever we were in meetings, it was mostly men. There were times where, in some of my jobs, where I was the only woman in the group. And, you know, I got used to that, but it's not going to be like that anymore. And that's why this building and an all-girls school providing this type of facility for all of you, I think, is just such a wonderful indication that it's not like that anymore. Girls should never feel that they should be pushed into some sort of field that they're not, that they shouldn't be pursuing science. And so I'm curious, out of all of you here, how many of you are interested in pursuing some sort of science in your career? Wow, that's great. So, you know, and I'm not saying that if you're pursuing something that's not science that that's bad. I think it's wonderful. You know, you should pursue whatever makes your heart beat faster, whatever you think is right for you. And so I'm thrilled that Villa Joseph Marie has the foresight and the vision to do this for all of you and for all the girls that will come afterwards. And very, very happy to be part of that. And seeing that, I know that you also have great arts programs here and everything else. So that's really why it made me so happy to be able to do this. And then it also didn't hurt that it creates new jobs, because that's really a big part of this grant, was making sure, you know, there's some economic benefit to the community. So to me, this is just such a huge win, because it creates jobs, it's in the community, it helps girls, it helps promote science. I can't think of anything that it doesn't do that makes me happy. And I also want to just tell you, because you guys are just starting your school year, that, you know, I told you a little bit about my story. And then after I became a statistician, I worked as a statistician, and then I worked in process improvement. I started my own company. I became a township supervisor in Solebury, and then I just won a special election to become your new state rep. So I want you to always know that if you follow your dream and you work hard, there's nothing to stop you from achieving what you want to achieve. And being here and having a great education is really the foundation of what you need to succeed in life. So work hard, study, do your homework, but have fun at the same time, and enjoy this new facility that you're going to have. So thank you.
Okay, here comes everybody's real boss. Hi, Mrs. Carter. All right, well, everybody, if you have a chance, make sure you say thanks to Representative Tai for being our advocate and for helping us out. Before you go home, make sure you hug a sister today, right? And I guess you probably, all the other 4 sisters have been introduced, is that right? So I'd like Sister Ann Monica Bubser to stand up and wave and say hi to everybody. Sister Ann Monica is from IHM Scranton. And all right, ice cream to know what's the connection between the IHM nuns and SSC, Sisters of St. Casimir. Anybody for an ice cream? No? All right, ice cream for Libby. All right, there's a very special connection between the IHM Scranton nuns and the Sisters of St. Casimir, because Mother Maria, when she came from Switzerland, when she was studying with her two buddies to start the order, they actually went to Mother Cyril in Scranton. By the way, you all should go to Marywood University and see the little statue of Mother Cyril, because it's life-size, and she's, Mrs. Carr probably is taller. So, and the cool thing is her hand is out, and all the sisters touch her hand on the way in and on the way out, which I think is a really cool little tradition. But anyhow, that is a nice connection. And Sister Ann Monica is a real big supporter of our school, and is one that gives us a lot of ideas about raising money, because that's her job with the IHM nuns, and she's a big supporter to Mrs. McDonald. So thanks, Sister Ann Monica, for traveling down to Okay, I'm giving the high sign that you guys are all done, and you can listen to Mrs. Carr for the exact instructions of what to do.